All right. We're enjoying some fellowship here tonight. This is good. There is more chili and there is more desserts out there and coffee. So we're going to get started here. If you want to get something, do it now. But while we're getting prepared here, I do want to give an announcement. And that is we are planning to have a Good Friday service on April 18th. On Good Friday, it's going to be in the afternoon, early evening at 6:30. And we're going to be having it at Les's house in Acton. So he just erected a 18-foot tall cross in his backyard, and it overlooks the valley in Acton. And so he had come to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to have a church event in my house, with the people, invite people." And we decided, you know what, a best time to do this would be on Good Friday, where we're celebrating what happened on the cross of Jesus Christ. And so that's going to be a great event. And so we want to invite people to come to this. Some people might never come through the doors of a church, but they might go to someone's backyard, with a celebration, and it's going to be a point of encouragement and fun, and have some refreshments there. It'll be about a 1 hour get together. So I'll be letting you know about it. This is going to be all hands on deck, to do things. We're going to even walk the neighborhood there and invite people to come and put out some flyers. So this is the very first flyer that we're putting out about it. So anyways, mark your calendars and plan to be a part of it, because it's going to be a wonderful time together. So we're going to get started tonight. I want to invite John on up. We're going to be studying in the book of Esther, which is great. So we're going to be starting. This is the first night of our study in the book of Esther. And it's always so good and wonderful, and an opportunity for discussion. We're going to be passing around a microphone for those who'd like to read some of the passages, and also for dialogue. This is meant to be a conversation, not a lecture here. So anyways, if you don't want to speak, just shake your head, and we'll pass the microphone on down to the next person in line. So, all right, here's Johnny.
All right. Let me turn this thing on here, and we'll get the show on the road. So, first of all, I think I've counted 21 people here tonight. That sounds about right, huh? Think about that. Think about that in the percentage of the actually congregants in this church, and we have 21 people at Bible study. Just think that this is a mega church, you'd have 2,100 at the Bible study. So it's pretty amazing. So tonight, we're going to be studying out of the book of Esther. We're going to start in chapter 1. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy this book. How I came up with this book was Joan wanted to do something about a story, like we did in Ruth. And there's a lot of books in the Bible that have stories. This one here is quite interesting. So also what I want to thank is Amy and Karen for bringing this delicious food. I'm telling you what, this is a 5-star diner, isn't it? I mean, it's absolutely amazing. Reminds me of the stuff I was having in Vegas. So the book of Esther. But hold on, before I get started here, I'm going to open with a prayer. So, Lord God, as we come to you right now, we're so grateful and thankful for everything we have. We're so grateful and thankful for this freedom to worship your word here at Living Springs Church. And Lord, I just pray that you'll be with each and every one of us. Let us learn something tonight from your word. And Lord, I ask that you be by each and every one of us, be by our sides and protect us in everything we do, Lord. And most of all, Lord, people that have not accepted you as Christ, I ask they do so right now and get into a good Christ-based church, get baptized, and follow the commandments. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. So, the main character in the book of Esther is a no-brainer. It's Esther, right? But what's interesting about Esther is she is a Jewish woman, right? And in 500 BC, women were not really held to high esteem. In other words, they were really, they were like down on the totem pole. They weren't really high up there, and especially a Jewish woman, right? So, and then the background about this book is there's a time of the year when they celebrate, and it's called Purim, right? And I've been involved with the Jewish community down there quite a bit, and I see them celebrating Purim. And it's a Jewish holiday, and they celebrate it once a year. It celebrates the salvation from genocide, is what it does. It celebrates the salvation from genocide because they had plotted to kill all the Jews, right? And that's happened like that in World War II. And thank God it didn't, it was a tragic situation. But this is similar to that, is they tried to, they were going to kill all the Jews, right? And and it is, excuse me, that chili just too good. So it is celebrated with feasting, right? I didn't say fasting, I said feasting. So, and I have a real good sense of that right now about feasting, right? Because we came back from Las Vegas, where we were in Las Vegas, and we don't gamble all that much, right? So what we do is we wander around, and in every corner there's a 5-star diner, and in between there's diners. So me and Joan almost ate herself into a coma up there, and we're lucky to be alive. Matter of fact, on the way home, I says, "Hey, Joan," I said, "You want to stop and get something to eat?" She goes, "No." And when I got home, she says, "You want something to eat?" "No, I don't want anything to eat. I'm done." So also, they give gifts, right, during Purim. They have these bags, and these bags have got gifts in them. They go to each and everybody's, go to a lot of houses, and they're sharing gifts and all that kind of stuff. And also, believe it or not, they wear costumes. And because I've got firsthand knowledge of this. I've seen Purim in action. And they got costumes, and they also have parades, in other words. So this is a big deal for them because it's celebrating something very important. It's celebrating salvation. And God chose Esther that was his vehicle to get this thing done, right? So, and the story of God, this is the story of God's intention, his intention was to save his people through one woman, and her name again is Esther, right? And the Esther was a courageous woman, and we're going to find out as we move forward into this Bible study that at one point in time she was going to have to go talk to the king, but you can't talk to the king without an appointment, and coming into where the king is, that could be the death penalty, right? And she said she didn't care. She wanted to save her people. So one thing about this book is there's not one mention of God in this book. Not one. They don't mention God at all. And so I got a question for y'all, and that is that why, and I want an answer too, is why do you think this book is in the Bible? That's God's word. This is God's word. We learned in Joel that God speaks through people, and this is the Bible. So why, if somebody give me an answer, why do you think this book is in the Bible and it doesn't mention God? Anybody have any idea? Go ahead, Karen.
Because it shows how God preserved the Jewish people, otherwise it would have been wiped out.
Okay. That's a good answer. Anybody else? What do you got, Joan?
It shows that God was working behind the scenes. And
Okay.
putting things together for,
All right. It shows that God was working behind the scenes. What do you think, Susan?
It shows also that God works through one person, and if she's willing to listen to him, the rewards are so great.
Right. Uh-huh. Angie, what do you think?
the same thing.
Same thing? Okay. All right. Yes. Rachel.
It shows God's plan of salvation, because if the Jews would have been wiped out, we would have never had Jesus.
That's right. The Jews would have been wiped out.
It also shows that not to plan something for some evil. Don't plan anything evil for for someone else, because it may end up being your fate.
Eldon, what do you think?
I think it shows that the Lord has his plan in lots of different things, and certainly with the nation of Israel.
Okay. I think that I think it's a clue for us to know that God is working behind the scenes in everything you do. Everything you do It's not going to happen unless God allows it. He has to allow it, right? So you could say, people that are not thinking about God, God is in control of them. And if people think about God, you have to be aware of that so you can give God the glory, right? And then again, like nothing happens without God. So Lamentations 3, who wants to read that one?
I'll start us off tonight. Lamentations 3:37. Nothing happens without God's permission.
Okay, there's God. He's mentioned there, and it says nothing happens without God's provision, right? But in this book they don't mention God, right? But we know that He's working behind the scenes, and we all had some good answers there. And in Matthew 10:29, who wants to read that?
Not a single sparrow can fall to the ground without your Father knowing it.
Think about that. God knows everything. He knows, and He cares about everything. He cares about us. He cares about all the animals. And even a single tiny sparrow that falls to the ground, God knows about it, right? So think about that. If it's a sparrow, just think about how important we are to God, right? So what we can learn from this, God's not mentioned in this book, but what we can learn from it is that acknowledge God always. Think about the book of Job, right? What happened to him? His whole family got wiped out. He lost everything. He didn't have one thing left. His kids were killed. His animals were sold. And what was the first thing he did? Anybody remember reading that? Yeah. He just praised God. He acknowledged God because he knows that he knows, just like we're reading right here, he knows that nothing happens without God. So praise God. I mean, it's going to be, sometimes it's tough to praise God. Myself dealing with some of these contractors down there, it makes it hard to praise God, right? But anyway, so Isaiah 45:7. Who wants to read that one?
Elder, do you mind?
Isaiah 45:7. I create the light and make the darkness. I send good times and bad times. I, the Lord, am the one who does these things.
Okay, I think this is a very interesting Bible verse because it reinforces that, the fact that God is not in the book of Esther, but it tells you that I am the Lord and He does these things. That's what He does, right? So that is pretty amazing. So you think about, now we're just talking about God working behind the scene, right? Well, I was trying to figure out what book to do a Bible study on, and because we were done with Joel. So when I got home last Wednesday night, I sat at the counter, man. I was thumbing through my iPhone trying to find a good book to do a Bible study on, and I came up with the book of Esther. So I started reading through the book of Esther, and it had some of these names in there, like Xerxes, the king, and I thought, okay, these are going to have way too many biblical names in there, and I'm not going to do that one. So about 3 days later, I still didn't pick one, and finally I just said, you know what? I'm going to go back to Esther, and I'm going to do Esther. I'm just going to do it. It was just like, kept saying to me, do Esther. So sitting at the countertop this morning with my beautiful wife, Joan, we're having some coffee, and she goes, hey, John, you know what tomorrow is? And I says, I have no idea. I have no idea what it is. And she goes, well, it's the first of 2 blood moons, which is going to happen, right? And you guys know what a blood moon is. Who knows what a blood moon is? What causes a blood moon? Yeah, it's a total eclipse of the moon, and it causes a blood moon. So, how many here know when Purim is? That we just talked about that. It's a celebration. How many know when that's at? When is that? Joan, you're too smart. You already know. Anybody know? What do you think, Pastor? When do you think it is?
I don't know what date this year.
Okay. Anybody? All right, all right. I'm going to answer the question. So we got 2 full blood moons coming tomorrow and Friday, and Purim starts tomorrow. I mean, do you think that's a coincidence? You think that was something, or do you think that was God working behind the scenes, and he kept hitting me over the head to do Esther, and finally I relented and said, okay, you give up. I win. You win. You know what I mean? I'm done. So the blood moon will appear over the U.S. March 13th and 14th. This particular one falls directly on the Jewish holiday of Purim. This particular, what's that?
Something really quick. I think Amy told me one time, I think she read in the Harbinger that the blood moons fall within the Jewish holidays within a few days.
Yep.
Do you ever remember? I remember you told me that. It's real close to Jewish holidays, and yet tomorrow is a blood moon, and it is on a Jewish holiday. It's kind of interesting. No, I don't think so.
Very good. Okay, that's great. We're getting some good participation out there. So this blood moon, this particular blood moon, falls on Purim, right? And it is when they were delivered from annihilation in the hands of an enemy called Haman. Now we're going to find out more about Haman. He's not in chapter 1, but he's in chapter 2, and he was quite the guy. So, who wants to read Esther 1?
These events happened in the day of King Xerxes, who reigned over provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia.
Okay, now I'm going to go. I think it's very important that we know just what Esther was up against. Okay, we need to know what she was up against. So I'm going to do a little bit of detail on King Xerxes, right? A little bit of detail. So one thing you want to know about this guy, he was the tallest of all the Persians. He was a big man, right? He was the very tallest of all the Persians. About 5 royal cubits high. That's how tall he was. And a royal cubit is 20 inches. Do the math. That is about 8 feet tall. Okay? So let me just show you real quick, like, any good contractor has a measuring tape, right? Right. So we're going to show you how tall 8 feet is here. And it's going to be right to there. That is 8 feet. Wow. He's a big man. And you know, with that kind of height, he's going to have a big frame too. And his hands are going to be huge, just like the guys that was arm wrestling last Saturday. So he's going to be a big, strong man, right? So he's 8 feet tall. He's known for his invasion into Greece. Another thing about him, and reading through this so far, I don't have any biblical documentation because there just isn't on him. But I believe he was a pagan king. In other words, he didn't believe in God. He probably didn't believe in the 10 Commandments. He was just a pagan king. And as we move forward in here, I think everybody's going to agree that he is a pagan king, right? So how many provinces, anybody know how many provinces are in Canada? A province is like a state. How many? 7, no. 7, no. Anybody else? Going once, twice? 10. Okay, there's 10 provinces in Canada. This guy here, he ruled over 127 provinces, right? And it stretched from Ethiopia to India, 2,810 miles, and it went across the Arabian Sea, right? So who wants to read 2?
At the time of Xerxes ruled his empire from his royal throne at the fortress of Susa.
Okay, and real quick, like the fortress of Susa was a fortified citadel, right? And this citadel was sitting in high ground, dominating the surrounding area, the surrounding city. It was located in the ancient city of Susa, and it's situated in modern day Iran. In other words, like this Susa, right now, if you were to go to where it was, the land where it was, that's going to be in Iran. But as you can, before the Iranians took the Americans hostage, it used to be called Persia, right? So, but now it's called Iran. So, it's often mentioned in the Bible as Shoshan, or Shushan. It looks like Shushan to me, but Shoshan, and that is where the story of Esther takes place. So it takes place in modern Iran. It's on a citadel overlooking the city, and it's a political center. It's a place where the treasury is, and that's where King or Queen Esther was faced with a 8-foot. And we're going to find out. It may sound like kind of funny right now, but we're going to find out. She was faced with an 8-foot drunken giant, who was a king in the citadel in modern day Iran, and that's what she was. That's one of the things she was faced with, right? Now, who wants to read 3?
In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. He invited all the military officers of Persia and Media, as well as the princes and nobles of the provinces.
Okay, so he was. It was his third year of his reign. So he's a relatively young king. In other words, as far as years goes, but he wanted to. So he wanted to have a party, a banquet. So he invited all the nobles and all that to the citadel, which is in modern day Iran. He invited them all there. So let's go ahead and read 4.
The celebration lasted 180 days, a tremendous display of the opulent wealth of his empire and the pomp and splendor of his majesty.
Okay, a party for 180 days. Now, you know the word party on, dude? That's a party, okay, for 180 days. And so my question to you, here's a good question for you guys. Who's partied for 180 days? That's 6 months. Anybody here partied for oh, we got a taker back there. Thank goodness for Susan. And how did you party, Susan? I told you yesterday I was going to put you on the spot, right?
Yes. Oh, boy. So how did I party for 180 days?
That's right. How'd you party for 180 days?
Well, you drink.
Okay. When you
wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
And you start to drink. And so these guys are here partying for 180 days, drinking wine.
Yeah.
Celebrating, doing whatever they please. You drink in the morning, go to sleep, they probably would start drinking again. And all the men are, getting together, beating up at each other's with their egos and.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, so let me ask you a question. When you're at a party, you're at a party like Super Bowl party. How many people are really praising God during that party? They really got their eyes on the Lord. Maybe the team that's losing, they're going, "Oh God, let me win." That's probably the only thing that happens out of that, right? And
But there's a lot of ego involved in that party too, because the king is showing off his wealth to everybody. Sure. And he's saying, "Look at me, I'm the king, and I have all this wealth," and he's just trying to get people around him, I think, too, to praise him and look up to him. I think he's throwing a party for people to admire him.
that's right. So I got to tell you, I'm guilty of that too, because I partied for about 40 years, right? About 40 years. We had a difficult situation in a church. I was a deacon of the church, and the church fell apart. And I said to myself, I'm never going back to church again. And even if I do, I'm never getting involved. So what I did is I focused on making money. I focused on doing everything but what the Lord wanted me to do, right? And then he got my attention. And so when you think about that, how do we, in a real simple way, a question for you, what else could the party like that represent? There's something this party can represent, and what else would that be? Anybody know? What was it? Well, what it represents is that this party represents that when people turn from God, in other words, they turn from God, and they just party on. They don't want nothing to do with God, and they take their eyes completely off God, and that's when everything goes bad, or as Trump would say, badly. That's when everything goes badly, right? So when we're actually not doing the Lord's will, we're not looking to do what He wants, and we're just doing our own thing. We're doing our own thing. Then we're in a big party, and we're not focusing on God, and so it's important to understand that. When you think about that, you're driving down the road, or you're working somewhere, and you take your eyes off the Lord, right? That's when you begin to party. So the moral of that story is, don't take your eyes off the Lord. Be aware of Him. Be aware that He's working behind the scenes at all times. He's working because He loves us and He wants the best for us, right? So, about him, he wanted to. This king, Xerxes, he wanted to show off what? Question: what did he want to show off? This guy. He wanted to show off his wealth, right? And his palace. His palace was grand. He wanted to show off that he had 127 provinces that stretched for 3,000 miles. So, another question for you: Do you think that that he thought this was his money, or God's money, or God's possessions, or do you think this was all about him? Okay. Yeah, I think that he had lost track of what was happening, and I know for a fact that he had the 10 Commandments. He knew about God. He had to have, and he didn't live that long. He was assassinated, right? He was assassinated. He was killed by, he lived by the sword and he died by the sword, and he was, in all this time, he was, party hardy. So here's something that really kind of sums this up, and it's in Isaiah 5, 11 and 12. Who wants to read that?
Woe to those who rise early in the morning in pursuit of strong drink, who linger into the evening to be inflamed by wine. At their feasts are the lyre and the harp, the tambourines, flutes, and wine. They disregard the actions of the Lord and fail to see the work of His hands.
Okay, so here in Isaiah, I think, it's like a companion Bible verse to this whole situation right here. But here in Isaiah, it says, woe to those who rise early in the morning in pursuit of strong drink, right? What does that mean? That means they probably have a hangover, and they're looking for a little bit of the hair of the dog that bit them, and so that's what they're looking for. And it says, who linger in the evening to be inflamed by wine, right? So, and their feast, and the lyre and the harp and the tambourines and the flutes and wine. They discard the actions of the Lord. They're discarding the actions of the Lord, and they can't see the work of His hands. They can't see what God is doing, right? So let's take a look at 5. Who wants to read that one?
When it was all over, the king gave a banquet for all the people, from the greatest to the least, who were in the fortress of Susa. It lasted for 7 days and was held in the courtyard
Okay, so the King Xerxes, he didn't have enough party, right? 180 days wasn't enough for him. So he had to have 7 more days of a party. But this time, what's interesting about that Bible verse, question for you, like, who did he invite, and why do you think he invited those people?
Well, he invited the common person, so he had, all his right-hand people and all his senior people on the, there at the beginning, and I think he had parties and had a good time and was drinking. I think he was getting a little bored with everybody who was around too. And he's like, let's just bring everybody and let's just, have them all come in and enjoy it. And that was like,
Yep.
but it was just all the men and everything. The women were still at home. And so his ego, by this time he's been having a good time and drinking, and then he decides to invite just the common people. And so you got a picture of this because you have all the nobles, and then you have all the commoners coming in, and you wonder how they all fit together during this time.
Yep.
Usually, they thought they were better than everybody and held themselves in higher esteem, and he's bringing in the common people into this party and mingling them all together. And so you wonder what the atmosphere was like during that time.
100%. And another thing about those days is this is a rough and tough time. I mean, they were in one war. If you look at the Old Testament, they were one war after another war. There's prophecies about wars. There's all kinds of, Jesus said, about wars coming. There'll be wars and rumors of wars. Well, this king, he was afraid. I think he was afraid of being assassinated. And I think he didn't want any uprisings in the town there. So he invited all the local people, and he lavished them with the best food and the best wine, and I'm sure they all just had a really good time. So I think that's one of the reasons why he did that. He invited the average common person, and it says from the people from the greatest to the least, he invited. And so he wanted, I believe it was a motive to keep him from being assassinated. So another thing, your thoughts on the king's 7-day banquet. Why do you think that he goes from a 180-day banquet to a 7-day banquet? Anybody have any ideas?
Probably was broke.
What was it?
He probably didn't have no more money but for our week.
Yeah, I think that the commoners. It's kind of like it's crazy, probably a crazy analogy, but you guys ever see the movie Caddyshack? About they have all these big, wonderful banquets for all the big shots, and then for the Caddyshack, they got about 1 hour to go swimming in the pool, and that's about what I think about this Bible verse right here. So.
Think too that, the common people out there, they're working and doing everything, and the kids have been partying and having a great time for 180 days. And I'm sure there was big frustration among themselves out there, and they're like, our kings aren't leading, all they're doing is partying and having, so there's a lot of grumbling going on, I'm sure, between the common people.
Very good.
So maybe he thought that because they were all grumbling and everything, maybe he thought, we'll just bring him to the party and then knock him down.
Right, yeah.
Now, obviously, this king did not read the Bible, because in Habakkuk, right, 2:15, who wants to read that?
What sorrow awaits you who make your neighbors drunk? You force your cup on them so you can gloat over their shameful nakedness.
Okay, so what do you guys think about this Bible verse? And specifically, what happens when you drink a lot? When you drink a lot of wine, or you drink way too much and you get a little tipsy, right? What happens? Very good. That's the exact word I was looking for, right? So he could have been, I'm relating this Bible to what he was doing the 7 day, and he invited all the commoners. Maybe he wanted to get them all drunk and find out exactly what they had on their mind. I've heard, wine and that stuff's called the truth serum. It comes out, or, heard the word speakeasies, right? That's what That's what alcoholic beverages will do for you, right? So I think that, but there's a warning in there to this guy, and I know that he had to have read the Bible. There's a warning to him. It says, don't do this to people. Don't. And another thing about this was when in those days when the king drank, right? He drank, and when he toasted, right? Everybody, it would be against the law not to drink, and when he's drinking, and not to have a toast and drink that when he's drinking, right? So it would have been against the law. So he gets them all in there, right? And he's probably just, he drinks so much that he could probably outdrink them all, drink them under the table, and he's trying to get them to say stuff so he knows what he's up against, right? And then let's go on to Habakkuk 16, right? Who wants to read that one?
But soon it will be our turn to be disgraced. Come drink and expose. Drink from the cup of the Lord's judgment, and all your glory will be turned into shame.
Okay, so the follow-up of that is people that do that, people that are encouraging them to drink or trying to find out what they're really up against. What does it say here? It says, but soon you will be turned to be disgraced, right? It'll be your turn to be disgraced. And it goes on to say, the Lord's judgment and all your glory will be turned to shame, right? So this guy, this king, he was not. This is what, remember I told you I thought he was a pagan? These are the reasons why I think he is a pagan. It sounds really cool at first that, hey man, he's giving a party for all the commoners. It's really, really great. But I don't think it was all that cool, right? So,
And Esther exposes him to who he is. It says, come drink and be exposed. He's kind of having a good time, but Esther brings the true color of him out into the light.
very good, Susan. That's why I asked you to come here today. I'm like the king. So who wants to read 6?
The courtyard and a beautiful, decorated with white cottons, curtains with blue hangings, which were fastened with white linen cords and purple ribbons, and 2 silver rings embedded in marble pillars. Gold and silver couches stood on a mosaic pavement and of prophecy, marble and mother of pearl and other costly stones.
Very good, Morgan. Very good. So this place was pretty elaborate. I mean, this is the courtyard. This is where they held the 7-day party, was in this courtyard, right? And it's really decked out. It looks really, really good. As a matter of fact, it has, the pavement had it was paved with mother of pearl, right? You guys ever seen mother of pearl like in a situation like that? I did a house overlooking the ocean in Manhattan Beach, and in the master bedroom, we covered all the walls with mother of pearl, and you've never seen anything so beautiful in all your life because it has all the different colors. It's got some blues, it's got some purples, it's got some browns, it's got some just pure whites. And when they open, they have these big electric shades. When they open them up, the sun comes in on these things, and it just shines. It looks absolutely beautiful. So I know this place, if they're just I know about that. I don't know about, decorated with cotton curtains or blue hangings, and that I know about being fastened to a marble column with a silver ring, right? This is solid silver ring, so it's fastened there. And you got to know there's not one of these columns. There's got to be hundreds of these things around there. So this place was pretty decked out. So a question for you. How many have gone to a place that has just been, like for an example, a church? How many have gone into a church and you walk in there and it just is absolutely glorious? Anybody have any accounts of that? Yeah?
In Washington, D.C., there's a national cathedral. They have glass stained windows, and even have a chunk of moon rock in the middle of one of the windows.
Oh, really?
Chapel.
Yeah, that's crazy. I remember Joan and I went down, I think it was in Anaheim, we went down to that Crystal Cathedral, and that was just absolutely amazing. And another thing, we just came back from Vegas, and I love the architecture there. I love the interior architecture, but I'm going to guarantee you, in the hotel rooms there, they don't have mother of pearl on the floor. It's just not going to happen. So the bottom line with all this, it was a very, very beautiful place, and I'm sure we've all seen. Like, anybody ever been to Hearst Castle? Yeah, Hearst Castle is really, really nice like that. And we were in this church in, what's that place in Louisiana that everybody goes? Yeah, New Orleans, yeah. No, it's New Orleans. Yeah. We went to this church, and right in the middle of all this place, New Orleans, there was this absolute grand church. I mean, it had beautiful oak pews, and just, it was decorated like crazy. So that's what reminds me of this right here, was that church in the middle of this place. New Orleans is not necessarily a real, shall we say, yeah, exactly.
Again, it's like he's bringing in the common people coming into this beautifully decorated place, and they're working in the fields, and they're dirty, and their feet, dirty, and sandals and everything, and they're walking in there on the mother of pearl ground, and they've got to be just in awe as they walk in and just think, here I am struggling, here's this man who's decorating this for a 7-day party.
Yeah, so you can see that Queen Esther, a Jewish woman, and I got to tell you something, she was not living like that. She was out back in 500 BC. The women were the one that did everything, and they were workers, and they weren't lavish with all this stuff here. So this is the area she was going to be thrust into, was this grand palace. So in 7, who wants to read that?
Drinks were served in gold goblets of many designs, and there was an abundance of royal wine, reflecting the king's generosity.
Okay, what do you guys think about gold goblets? Now, we know that an ounce of gold right now is probably about $2,600, right? An ounce of gold. Like if you had an American silver eagle, it'd be like $2,600 for that coin, or maybe it depends, it's market price and all that. But what do you think about? Has anybody here ever drinking out of a gold goblet?
I think some of them were missing after that. Some of the common people.
Okay, now here's the twist in this thing. What else does it say? It says goblets of many designs is what it says. So the way I'm thinking about this right here, you guys tell me, but I'm thinking about this is not just one goblet. In other words, when we sit down as a family, we're going to have water glasses and wine glasses and everything like that, and they're all going to be exactly the same, right? They're not going to be different. But he had, listen to this, at this 7-day party, he had to have thousands of people there because his courtyard was huge. And he invited everybody there to this party. And what does it say? It says, goblets of many designs. So I think this guy was so rich that, and again, this is what Esther's going to be into, that not one goblet was the same. They were all different. Think about that. So it tells you that these goblets were either custom made or they were taken from some, they were plunder from somewhere, because he did a lot of plundering, and they could have been, and we're going to find out about that. But think about that. All these goblets, many goblets, and they were different designs, and he had to have thousands of them. So you think about a gold goblet, and you take by today's money, $26 an ounce. There's probably 2 ounces. So, each just the gold, I mean, $2,600 an ounce. Just the gold alone would be $5,200 for the gold, right? So I think that's pretty decadent, right? So,
What is the difference between royal wine and regular wine?
what was that now?
What is the difference between royal wine and regular wine?
Royal wine? Well, me and Joan and Susan and myself, we had a conversation about that when we were driving out to look at I look for our daughter. And by the way, I got to tell you something. We were in the car, in the truck, and we said a prayer, just getting off the off ramp. I said that, God, you said if two or more are gathered in your name, you're going to be there as well. So, God, we want you to ride with us, stay right with us, and I want you to take us immediately to Jamie, my daughter Jamie. Susan and Joan, how long did it take to find her?
Well, we got right off the freeway and drove right to the 7-Eleven park, walked, and she was standing there
Yeah.
yelling at somebody. So there she was. There she was.
Little sidebar there, but I thought that was pretty cool. So, so what's the difference between royal wine and regular wine? Well, we had a conversation about that. And regular wine in those days was used, it was like a staple. In other words, it was something that everybody drank was wine. But the wine back then, there was two types. One type was for the commoner, and because they couldn't afford a lot of wine, so they would dilute it about 3-1. And when they would dilute it, it would kill all the bacteria in the water, and yet it had some good flavor to it. But they couldn't afford, full-blown wine, right? Probably like the wine Jesus made there at the wedding when the host said, you save the best wine for last, right? Probably like that wine right there. That would be royal wine, and the non-royal wine would be the one that would be diluted, because they used wine like Neosporin back then. It healed wounds, and they did all kinds of stuff with it. But I'm sure that the royal wine was pretty powerful. And then we even talked about what? We talked about wasn't even fermented at all, right? Just grape juice.
We got into a really good discussion in the car. In my opinion, the good wine is really just a grape juice, a really freshly picked grape juice.
It's got the new skins.
The horrible wine, which would have the alcohol in it, or the fermented wine, was really old wine. Good wine was grape juice.
Yeah, so you're saying good wine is just grape juice, like we have. We use that on communion, right? That represents the blood of Jesus Christ who died for us all. So that where we're Les went, that's the difference, Les. He's gone.
Yeah, I know.
So I mentioned to you, I mentioned, I says, well, how do you think it came, how do you think he got all these different, and they were all different, right? So, guys, have any idea, any thoughts on how he might have gotten those, do you think?
If he was, how many
He had all these
provinces,
different
127
provinces, he
provinces?
probably was gifts,
He probably just stole them, took them.
or they were brought as gifts to him.
I don't think the foreign had
No, but I mean,
he just took.
Well, he was a big warrior, right? And we said, what, he has 127 provinces, it stretched for over 3,000 miles, and he conquered all those. And do you think when he conquered them, he didn't plunder all their goods and stuff? Of course he did. He plundered them all, and then he took them back to his place there, and that's why he probably had so many gold goblets. Now, Daniel is one of my favorite books, and let's just see what Daniel 5:3 has to say about that, right? Anybody want to read that?
Say they brought these gold cups taken from the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines drank from them.
Okay, so this Bible verse has just got, we could do a Bible study on that Bible verse right there, but we're not. We're going to just go over this here, go over it just real quick like. But where did this king, right, where did he get his gold cups? Well, it says here, where? Okay. He got them from the temple of Jerusalem. Now, who lives in Jerusalem? We were just talking about that not too long ago. But who primarily lives in Jerusalem? Be the Jews, right? So that means that if he took all their stuff, if he was able to get this out of the temple, all their golden goblets, get it out of the temple, what does that mean? That means he plundered it. That means he took over Jerusalem, and that's exactly what happened. And that's why the Jews are living there here in Persia, right? Modern day Iran, and they are literally second-class citizens because they were overtaken and overthrown probably by this king. And he plundered their he took it from their temple, right? And that's one of the reasons, that's how I believe that he got all these different goblets and stuff. So let's go down to Esther 8. And who wants to read that one?
John, I think the Jewish holiday is Purim pronunciation. Yeah. Okay, so by edict of the king, no limits were placed on the drinking, for the king had instructed all his palace officials to serve each man as much as he wanted.
Okay, so we were just talking about that earlier about, getting his neighbors drunk, and that's what they had here. The king, he made a like an executive order. What do they call that? Donald Trump signing so many of them. Executive what? Okay. Well, anyway, that's probably what he did. He probably made it an order right then and there. It says, look, you guys can drink as much wine as you want to. And why would he want them to drink a lot of wine again? They could lose all their inhibitions, right? And right.
Well, also, when you're doing something wrong, you usually want somebody along with you to do it. So you're it's already the whole time. That's just like when he uses his glass and everybody has to drink. He wants somebody else to be along with him because he doesn't want to be up there drunk in front of all of them. So that's just teaching how people follow other people and how you bring people into sin into your life because you want somebody else to come with you. And we tend to do that in our everyday lives today.
That's right. And this wine wasn't the commoner's wine, right? It wasn't diluted. This was the king's wine, right? This is royal wine. And he said to all these people that were there at that 7-day event, a 7-day banquet, let them drink as much as they want. Just, they give them as much as they want, as much wine as they want to have. And so he did, and this is the real stuff. This is the real deal. It was really, really intoxicating. It wasn't diluted 3-to-1. Again, the custom in those days was that when the king toasted, people had to toast with him. And when you toast, what do? You consume what's in your cup, right? And when he drinks, you have to drink, and that's what he was doing. And this king, as we're gonna read here in a little bit, this king drank a lot of wine. I mean, he was a giant drunkard, is what he was. So, and then we have 9, verse 9. Who wants to read that one?
At the same time, King Xerxes gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace for 3 days.
Okay, so we have, what does that Bible verse tell you about the people at these banquets and parties? What does that Bible verse tell you? That's right. Now, me and Joan have been to a lot of Jewish banquets and weddings and things like that. And sure enough, to this day, they sit separated. And Joan was a lot uncomfortable the first one we went to because we just figured we'd be sitting together. Oh, no. she sits over there, and I sit over here. They're separated, right? And if you had to guess why would it be? Oh, by the way, you know that even in a synagogue, when they're doing their version of a Bible study, the men and women are separated. They're not separated like into a completely different room, but they have partitions where a man can't see a woman and a woman can't see a man. And their reasoning behind that is that it might take, it might take the focus by some guy, looking at a beautiful woman, might take the focus off studying the Bible. So they want them to be partitions off. So in those days, real quick, like we're going to get this in a second, but how would a woman be partitioned off? How would that happen?
Cover her face.
Was that now? That's right. Exactly. She would cover her face. We're leading to something. This is going to get juicy here in a minute. We're leading to something, and so it was a custom that the women in Persia would keep their face covered. Right? They didn't want. They didn't want men and women to associate in any way, shape, or form, and so the women, they didn't want to sit there having a good time with their their girlfriends and all that kind of stuff. They didn't want to sit there and be covered the whole time, right? They wanted to have a good time, and that's why they had separate parties or separate. They were walled off. Yep.
They still do that today, because Persia is Iran, right?
Saudi Arabia has
So
the
in
same thing.
Iran, the women today still cover their face.
Yeah.
But it's still the same.
You know what I also heard, they just, say, she gave a banquet, so I'm sure there was drinking of wine going on at their festival also. And you wonder if that was loose in her traditions for when she told the king no. So if all this drinking hadn't been going on, would she have had the courage to tell the king no?
Yeah, we're going to get into that here in a second. That gets really, really good. But anyway, you can see how that little Bible verse right there tells you a story of what's happening. This is what's happening in Queen Esther's days. This is what's happening. Now, the Orthodox Jews, they still practice this, but 90% of the people, the women aren't running around, or 90% of the women here in America anyway, are not running around with veils covering their face, right? So Queen Vashti gave a party, and it was only women. The reason why is they didn't want to be covered up, and so Queen Vashti, she's over there at this party, and something's going to happen here. So let's see here. Okay, this is going to be this Bible verse right here is going to be for Eldon. And it is 10.
Verse 10. On the seventh day of the feast, when King Xerxes was in high spirits because of the wine, he told the 7 eunuchs who attended him, Behuman, Bistha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass.
Isn't he good? I could no more pronounce that than I could fly. What I'd have to do is I'd have to cut and paste that and put it in my little lap and have the little lap read it off to me. But it'd sound like too much computer noise, right? So, see, Eldon and Rachel have read the Bible, I think, cover to cover and then back from cover to cover. So they're really, really good at this. So here we have, so get this now, we know they're having a separate party. The women are in one party and the men are in another party. And he said on the seventh day of the feast, the king was high on wine, and because of the wine, he told the 7 eunuchs who attended, and then he mentioned their names, right? And then we're going to get into it at 11 and said what he told the eunuchs. And by the way, if the king he was ordering these people around to go and tell her, and why do you think the eunuchs had to go and tell the queen this message we're going to read here in a minute? Why do you think that happened? Why is that happening? Why doesn't just one go over there and tell the queen?
Probably knew she would hesitate with one, but with 7, she'd take it seriously.
You had another reason why is they wanted to have eyewitnesses to this. They wanted to have a group of people that could eyewitness this thing and see how this went down, right? So let's read. Let's go ahead and read 12, and we don't need a scholar to read this one. So who wants to read it?
11.
Oh, is it 11? Oh yeah, I'm sorry, 11. Thank you. So who wants to read 11?
To bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head, he wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze on her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman.
Okay, so he said, bring the queen, Vashti, to him with a royal crown on her head. He wanted the nobles and the other men to gaze at her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman. Okay, so what's wrong with that picture right there? What's the problem with that? What did we just talk about?
Well, the women were allowed to go in there. He was calling for his queen, and he was his buddies, and so he's been boasting about her and carrying on about her beautiful wife, and he sent them to demand her to come see him, so he could just show her off. And it says with a crown on the head, so you would think that she would not have her face and her hair covered, that she would have the crown on her head on full display. And so he sent them to come bring him to him. And so his ego and his self-will is out of control. And he just wants to be boastful of his wife. No consideration of the women or her. Just bring her to me now.
Okay, so we have the deal here. She's been summoned, or he wanted her to go in front of all these drunken men, right, and show off her beauty. So who wants to read 12?
But when they conveyed the king's order to Queen Vashti, she refused to come. This made the king furious, and he burned with anger.
Okay, well, so what happens to a lot of people when they drink a lot of royal wine? What happens to them? Yeah, belligerent. They get mean, and they rage over simple things. Although it's not really simple, but they're not picking the hills they want to die on very carefully, right? They're drunk, and they're not thinking clearly. So, question for everybody here: why do you think the queen refused to go? Why do you think that happened?
She probably knew he was just inviting her in to show her off. And she'd been a little bit tipsy. She didn't want to be in.
Right.
She wanted to be showing off like her child.
In a way, he was humiliating her, absolutely. To have her be gazed upon is
Yep.
humiliating. Unless she has ulterior motives for it. It's got to be respectful.
Yeah. So another thing about that, and the king had to know this, right? He had to know this. But another thing about that, it was against the law for women to go out in public not being covered, right? So he was asking her, she was darned if she did and darned if she didn't, right? He was asking her to come out here, and you know there had been thousands of men out there, and they're all drunk, and asking her to go over there and unveiled, just with her crown on, and show her beautiful face to all these guys. I mean, by today's standards, that would be, showing a lot more than your face, right? So that's why one of the reasons why she refused. And another thing is, I mean, don't you think that'd be a little bit demeaning? I mean, I think that'd be terrible for him to ask her that. But why would he ask her that? Well, because he's drunk, and he's lost all his inhibitions. He has no idea. So the Okay, another thing I want to ask you. This guy's the king, right? And he's surrounded by, we're going to get into that in a second, he's surrounded by advisors all the time. He's got them right in his beck and call, his advisors. So do you think the king might have known that this was illegal in that time to do that? You think he might have known that? Anybody? Of course he did. He was not only asking her to do something illegal, he was asking her to do something immoral according to their culture. That was not morally correct back then. And what did the king do? He just got enraged. He was enraged over this thing, right? So let's move on here to 13. Who wants to read that one?
He immediately consulted with his wise advisors, who knew all the Persian laws and customs. He always asked their advice.
Okay, so like I said, he's surrounded by advisors, and what his big mistake was, he should have asked the advisors before he demanded that she go over there to find out, and they would have said, no, she can't do that. That's against the law. That's morally incorrect. But he didn't do it. Why? Because he's a king and he can do it. He can just go and make all these demands. Now he's boxed himself into a corner, and we're going to find out that he had remorse over this. We're going to find out on 2. He had a little, and although Susan and Joan disagree with me. No, I believe he had remorse. It's kind of like when you do something, and then the next morning or something like that, you wake up and go, oh man, what did I say that for? As you're prying your foot out of your mouth, and you're just trying to get over it. So he did have remorse. So we're going to go through these right here. So he consulted with all of his advisors and asked for their advice. And that's the thing about this king. I mean, he's an 8-foot giant king, right? He's been in wars all over the place. He's killed many of people. He's plundered at least probably 127 places. And he's asking these advisors what to do next. I just think that's interesting. So who wants to read? This is a pastor, or Amy, or Karen, or Rachel. Rachel, I think this is yours.
The names of these men were Katrina, Chethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Memucan, 7 nobles of Persia and Media. They met with the king regularly and held the highest positions in the empire.
Very good. Okay, you're on the list now. So you're going to be pointed out. So anyway, what that is, those biblical names right there, that's just explaining to who his advisors were. So 15, who wants to read that one?
What must be done to Queen Vashti, the king demanded? What penalty does the law provide for a queen who refuses to obey the king's orders, properly sent to his units?
Okay, so he's asking them, what should we do with the queen? She basically disobeyed orders, the king's orders, and he didn't make a decree that women could go and show themselves without a veil on. He didn't make that decree. He just said that's what he wanted. That's what he wanted her to do. And now he's saying, what should we do when she disobeyed the king's order? And what do you guys think about that? Do you think she did disobey the king's order? Anybody?
I don't think she did anything wrong. Well, but she did directly disobey his order.
Yeah.
So she did, she knew there would be a penalty. What I find is fascinating, he has to ask, what penalty does the law provide for a queen? So he didn't even know, right, the penalty for what she had done. He had to ask his advisors, so he doesn't even know his own rules and laws and penalties. Because he's a weak man, he's always relied on his group surrounding him for answers and for guidance. Because he immediately called his consultants and asked
Okay, so let's go on to 16. Who wants to read that one?
Answered the king and his nobles. Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but also every noble and citizen throughout your empire.
Okay, so this guy here, the main character here in this Bible verse here, he's like the top dog. He's like the leader of that group, and he answered the king and said that Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but every noble and citizen throughout the empire, right? So she wronged everybody, supposedly, by keeping to the custom, by keeping to the moral law. She has supposedly wronged everybody because the king, in a drunken rage, told her to come over without her veil on, right? And she didn't want to do it. So, you guys want to finish this up? It's 8:13 right now. We probably have another.
On the last page.
We got more than that. We'll go too late, but I'll tell you, this thing is going to get really, really good, and we'll start back up. When we get back here, we'll start back up in 17, and we'll start from there, and then from there we're easily going to be able to get into the stuff that makes more sense, but. What I wanted you guys to do is get a good sense of this. We have a crazy 8-foot-tall drunken king, right? He's shouting orders at the queen to do different things. We know that he's worried about getting assassinated, and we know all kinds of things about him. So we'll start back up, and let me close with a prayer here. So Lord God, as we come to you again just now, thank you for your word, Lord. And thank you for everything you've done. And Lord, I just hope that this Bible study was pleasing to you, Lord. And Lord, I just ask again that to give us wisdom, to make good wisdom, Lord, to make the proper decisions. Lead us and guide us in everything we do. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Okay, come on, let's put your shoes on.
Thank you, Andrew. What was your name?